Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton and Jeff Simmons here to talk through a number of different topics today. There's a lot going on today, and before we get on to Seahawks and draft-specific things, but there's a couple of quarterback topics to quickly touch on, Jeff. Drew Lock has signed for the Seahawks, which, for me, I don't think is that big a deal. We can talk about that briefly. It's just been revealed that Derek Carr could now be out for the whole of the NFL season this year, which means that the Saints drafting a quarterback early just became very, very realistic at number 9. I know that's Tom McShay had them taking Jackson Dart number 9 overall this week. So perhaps he had a whisper on something to do with that. So that becomes very realistic. Quickly on Drew Lock, Jeff. My take on this is John Schneider likes Drew Lock. John Schneider has a lot of cap space available. John Schneider has decided to sign Drew Lock, and it probably says more for Sam Howell than anything else. The Seahawks could still draft a quarterback, although I think they're going to go a bit earlier than people realize, and this Derek Carr injury is one of the reasons why. So if they come off the ball quickly, the Seahawks could be left without any option there. But this is about having the chance to bring somebody in who he likes, and they will let it play out. I don't think it means anything particularly for the draft, but at the same time, if they don't draft somebody now, they'll just go into the camp with the 3 quarterbacks. I don't think it's a massive deal, but what do you think about it?
At first, I was very confused, and the more I kind of sat back and kind of put things together, I think you're right. I think the one thing it impacts more than anything is Sam Howell's future with the team, and that might not be long. Like one of the Vikings beat writers, I think his name's Alec Lewis. He's the equivalent of what Michael Sean Dugar does for The Athletic. He wrote that Sam Howell a couple weeks ago was an option for the Vikings as a backup. But I remember me seeing that and I was like, that's patently absurd. Like, why would anyone trade for Sam Howell? And then all of a sudden this signing goes down and they don't have a backup quarterback because Daniel Jones spurned them to go to the Colts. I wouldn't be surprised if Howell's off the roster before the draft because it kind of made sense how it was kind of setting up. Darnold's the clear starter. It was going to be Howell versus a drafted quarterback as the backup that ultimately might push Howell off the roster. If Howell's gone by the draft, I'm guessing Locke just replaces Howell in that scenario. Locke's a totally adequate backup quarterback. Everyone's making this John Schneider big deal. The dude threw for like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns that ultimately cost the Giants number one. Like, he's not a good quarterback, but he's a backup. Like, Brady Henderson put out the contract. It's a nothing burger. So I don't think it changes much. I think ultimately they're just going to end up swapping out Locke for Howell, which is what Schneider wanted in the first place last year.
So what do we think then? Because the Vikings don't have many picks. So what are we saying, like a 2026 sixth or something like this for Sam Howell?
Whatever the equivalent of a ham sandwich is, that's what I think they would trade. A 2026 sixth, seventh conditional. I can't imagine Sam Howell is close to any trade value. So I think it's on the last year of his contract. We saw him play in that Green Bay game. And so I don't imagine it wouldn't be a very exciting return, let's say that, if they can even trade him at all.
And then what about this Derek Carr news quickly? It's hard to imagine, Jeff, that if Carr is out, they have to draft a quarterback early, don't they? And I don't think they can necessarily wait to number 40. There's been a bit of talk that maybe there are quarterbacks in round 2 and round 3 that they like. Can they seriously afford to go into this? I mean, the Spencer Rattler's there. Maybe that buys them a little bit of, okay, look, he was okay when he played. We don't feel like we've got to force this, but let me put it this way. Do you think this makes a quarterback at 9 likely now, or do you think there's still a chance they wait?
I think it's pretty likely. Like I heard the McShay podcast, which by the way was really good. Like there aren't a lot of good draft content going on right now, and you've done a good job. But I've been having a real trouble finding like good stuff. It's a lot of fluff, and he was kind of really pushing the Dart over Shadur thing for the Saints. And now that McShay's off ESPN, he can be a lot more open of what he was. So I think it just became very real. If you're a draft gambler, like I might be, the Saints suddenly their pick became the favorite to draft a quarterback in the last week. And over all the other positions they could have drafted. And Shadur Sanders, you could draft on where he goes. The team that became the favorite in the last week was the Saints. I don't know if people had inside information on Carr because we had not heard anything till today, but Kellen Moore comes in. He's an offensive guy. He probably wants his own quarterback. Derek Carr always was a weird fit. They had to keep him because of circumstance more than anything else. So now I think it's almost a certainty that they're going to draft the quarterback at 9. And if you're one of those guys hoping the Seahawks would end up with Jackson Dart, I think the odds are pretty slim at this point.
The other thing I was going to say quickly on quarterbacks not relating to the Seahawks, but then we'll move on to the Seahawks, is I was talking to someone recently, Jeff, and they said that they gave, this is somebody who knows his SHIT. He said that he gave Cam Ward a 3rd round grade.
Wow.
And he gave Shador a round 2 grade. And I don't know if you've seen this guy who is Lance Zierlein gave him some props because last year he's basically worked for teams. He's an analytics person called Tyler Oberle. And he, this time last year, put out a tweet saying, according to my system, the 2 best players in the quarterback class are Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. It's not close.
Wow.
And Lance Lance really pushed this guy afterwards, saying, I know who this person is. He's very interesting. I know he's working for teams, and I know his information is really useful. Now, he put a pair of tweets. Well, he put a collection of tweets out this week, Jeff. He mustn't be working for anybody because he basically just listed everybody he likes. And he said that the top quarterback per his model is Cam Ward. However, he is not worth the number 1 overall pick. And if you were going to use Mike Sando's quarterback tier list as a perspective, that he would only ever be a tier 3 level quarterback at best, which makes me think, why are the Titans drafting another quarterback 1st overall? Just like we've had Malik Willis, we've had Will Levis, Cam Ward. When are they going to realize that, maybe you should build a team and then and maybe be patient with the quarterback or go and do what Seattle's done and just go and get a Sam Darnold or something like that and build your team. I can't believe the Titans are going to do this again. I hope for their sake that Cam Ward's good. Got no horse in the race. But I just feel as if this is yet another dysfunctional franchise making a silly mistake.
Yeah, it's been peculiar because they've essentially painted themselves into a corner where they had to take him. Like, some people would have hedged their bet. Like, clearly Will Levis has not worked out there, but they have time. They have a new general manager from Kansas City who's a well-regarded guy in the league. Like, he could have easily come in and say, like, we need to build this team up. If there's a team that had, like, in my opinion, one of the worst off seasons last year, but the media all praised them because they were signing all these guys in free agency, was the Titans. It seemed like they were run like a 15-year-old, and the GM got fired already. The coach was kind of a bland, no-name guy. So they could have easily been like, listen, we're in year 1 of this thing. Like, let's build this thing up. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, maybe take a flyer on a quarterback later, try to build it up. But they have this weird mix where they signed they paid a lot for like Kevin Zeitler, who's an older offensive lineman, and they paid that left tackle from Pittsburgh like $20 million a year. And it seems like they're just acting in pure desperation. It's very hard to see a scenario like, I know Louis Riddick has come out and say like he has some Mahomes to him, and I know Louis Riddick's a big fan of his, but like to me, like, they're taking a risky path of how to build a winning team. Like, even to get him in there, like, you don't have a lot of receiving talent. There's not much of a running game. They have an offensive line that's okay, but yeah, I wouldn't be too excited about that path.
I think they're an absolute car crash. They're going to bring him in. He doesn't have any weapons. They don't have a pass rusher, but they're going to snub Abdul Carter. They're going to take Cam Ward 1st overall when, they could be one of the teams that are trading back into the 1st if they want one of these other quarterbacks. They could just take one at 35. They could go and get a veteran quarterback. They're not doing that. You mentioned the offensive line. It's one of those offensive lines that feels good on paper. So they drafted Peter Skoronski. They play him left tackle 1 year, then they have to move him into guard because he's always been a guard. They take J.C. Latham in the top 10. They put him at left tackle. They're now having to move him to right tackle because he's never been a left tackle. Now they've gone and signed the Pittsburgh left tackle for $20 million a year, who the Steelers used a 1st-round pick last year to replace. So it doesn't seem to, none of this stuff seems to make any sense. And I'm not going to go on too much about the Titans here, but I just found that illuminating when somebody told me, I don't think he's actually that good, Cam Ward. I think he's a 3rd-round player. I think Shador Sanders has got a round better grade than he has. And yet this guy's like the universally accepted 1st overall pick. I just find it very, very strange. And I just think, I don't think the NFL, if you said you were an NFL gem, you get immediate kudos. I don't think half these gems know what they're doing, really. I genuinely think they have their heads scrambled by the pressure from ownership, from fans, from the situation. I think it's a very difficult job, and you can be very, very good on the lower level, just being a scout. The minute you're the one making the call, I think it becomes very, very difficult. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about the Seahawks, Jeff, was Kelvin Banks Jr.
Yeah.
This week, we've seen Todd McShay and Mel Kiper project Kelvin Banks to be the 18th overall pick. Personally, not crazy about it. Sort of understand why it might happen, because Lance Zierlein's got him as the 14th highest graded player on his board. Other people like McShay have got him in the 20s and are not as high. There's a few people who kind of see him as a late first or a fringe first rounder. But this idea that maybe the Seahawks know that they're not going to give Abe Lucas a new deal, so he could potentially end up being the right tackle of the future, but for now could play guard, or maybe he just works really well at guard and you keep him there. I can sort of see it. I wasn't crazy about Charles Cross. They drafted him in the top 10. Zierlein gave Cross a 6.44 grade. He's given Banks a 6.43. They're kind of the same thing. So I've got a few other things to say about him, but I just wondered what are your thoughts on this kind of like in the last week? That's been the name that people are mocking to Seattle.
Yeah, he's had like a very strange run of like his range. Like it was initially like he was around like every mock draft had him in like the 10 to 13 range, and he didn't really do much at the combine. All of a sudden, every mock draft just had him in the 20s, and all of a sudden this week, yeah, you're right. He appears in both of Seattle's mock drafts, and there was like a 3-tweet stretch from like Field Yates and a couple guys being like, "Why is no one talking about Kelvin Banks? Like he's a top 15 player for me." I was like, "Where is this all coming from?" Like nothing has changed, and his value is like versatile. Like I get the idea of it. Like I don't love him at like if he's the future right tackle. Like I wouldn't be like over the moon excited. Like I can see potentially the idea in theory of taking a tackle, moving him inside, having him be a really good guard. He has the requisite skills, but there's just some reps where he just struggles in pass pro. And there's some people I know who really, really like Banks. I don't have a great feel for him yet. I'll be honest. I thought he was kind of out of their range. I don't know. There's some parts about him, like there's some time on film, and you'd know this better than anyone. You watch a lot more film than I do, where he just looks struggling in pass pro, like basic pass pro stuff. But that's at him at tackle. I think he could be a decent guard, but I have not spent a lot of time on him. I never saw it. I know there's guys on my show who would like he are over the moon for him. So I need to kind of go back and learn a little more about him, but I still don't know if, gun to my head, I don't know if that's the guy. I think people are just assuming that it's going to be offensive line. He's the highest rated line. But I look at a team like Miami. They just lost their left tackle. Like, could he play left tackle for Miami? Maybe. So he's kind of caught in between right now where, like, a lot of people mock him to Houston because of that. They need basically everything on their line, the Texas connection. And I think Seattle's in that spot now where Zabel all of a sudden, you were kind of talking about this before, Zabel's flying up these boards in these like mock drafts. So if Zabel's gone, people are like, we have to give Seattle some offensive linemen, and you've kind of made the argument maybe that's the wrong way to do it. But I think the media is kind of just turned to the next offensive lineman, and by their boards, a lot of the time that's him.
He's a funny player because, I mean, when you watch him, just see if you notice how often he's on the floor. And that's immediately for me is a bit of a turn off. I don't want to see my offensive lineman on the floor as much as he is. He's got balance issues. And I just think when you're playing stronger, heavier men in the NFL, if you're on the floor too much in college, that worries me a little bit. The other thing with him, Jeff, is I don't think testing is the be-all and end-all. I like Tyler Booker, for example.
Me too.
So I know that, let's just get that out there right away. I am not someone who is going to sort of just diminish someone because of their testing. But the reason I like Tyler Booker, aside from the testing, is because I can watch the tape and I see him doing things that I think mitigate the lack of his ability to run in a straight line and jump in the air. And when I watch Kelvin Banks, I keep hearing people say he's an athlete. And I actually had a look at this yesterday. Now, if you actually look at the best NFL offensive linemen, you can pick any of them. I've got the list here. Trey Smith, Tristan Wirfs, Lane Johnson, Roshan Slater, Quinn Miners, Cam Jurgen, Zach Tom, Drew Dorman, Frank Ragnow, Creed Humphrey, Chris Lindstrom, Vera Tucker, Trent Williams, you get the picture. Quentin Nelson, Linderbaum, McCoy. They're all explosive testers, all of them. Kelvin Banks is not. Kelvin Banks's explosive testing mark is based on the system that I use here, is the same as Joe Huber's from Wisconsin. It is less than Connor Colby at Iowa. So he's not an explosive athlete right off the bat. And then I had a look at sort of that foot quickness, Jeff, because that's important in this game. So look at the 10-yard splits. His 10-yard split is a 1.78. That's the same as Luke Kandra and Caleb Rogers. It's marginally better than Jake Majors and Carson Vincent. He is right in the middle of the draft class. As a comparison, Josh Connolly's is a 1.70. Jared Wilson, 1.71. Tate Ratledge, a 1.72. Jonas Avenea, a 1.72. Armand Membu, a 1.74. Will Campbell, a 1.75. He hasn't got the foot quickness or the explosive traits. What is there to actually get excited about here as an athletic tester? I mean, as an upside player, has he actually got anything?
And that's where I think back and before, I think it's a media mistake of where they're like, okay, the Seahawks are taking an offensive lineman. Zabel has become the guy because of the natural zone. And a month ago, before Kubiak and crew got hired, it was Tyler Booker who was in the spot. So now they're just coming back to, okay, who's an offensive lineman? And people like the idea historically of tackles moving inside to guard because they're not quite the athletes to play at left tackle. So, but when you start to really dig in there, I think you make a good point. Like, John has made a very clear emphasis when talking. And for better or worse, in the past, John has really relied on the offensive line coach to evaluate the players they draft. I think it was very telling some of the players they didn't go to in free agency because of the coaches they have now. Like Mekhi Becton was with John Benton, and they didn't want him. When they had Solari and they had Wick Dilkerson and Cable, they looked for different players. Foot quickness is the one thing they keep talking about, getting off the ball, which is why I personally love Tyler Booker. Like, I can't complain the team doesn't take a guard, and then if we took Tyler Booker, I can't complain. But when I try to evaluate, I think they're going to do, I think of these guys, and there's a variety of options, and you can see who they've met with already. It seems to be a type. So I'm like you. I'm struggling to see the fit. I think it's just the natural conversation of, okay, this is a pretty good tackle. We think he'd be a really good guard because we saw Dominic Pooney do it last year. But Dominic Pooney checked off a lot of boxes for some people. I wasn't too super high on him, to be honest. But I'm not a master offensive line evaluator. I think they're going to really rely on John Benton. And I don't know if Banks is the kind of guy that historically they've gone to. But again, you made the point. They drafted Luis Fuaga last year. They've drafted Aaron Banks in San Francisco. So I'm so curious to see what they do. But my gut feel is I don't know if Banks will be on their radar. I think it's just, and I'm guessing if you looked at Mel Kiper, his history of projecting the Seahawks, I bet you it's pretty low.
I would agree. And I think one of the other things is, part of me thinks if he's good enough to go 18, like you said earlier, if it's not Miami at 13, apparently the Colts quite like the idea of drafting a guard / tackle. The Niners, the Niners have got a situation where Trent Williams is going to retire soon. Colt McKivitz is not a very good right tackle, and they've lost interior offensive linemen. What the Niners need more than anything else is defensive linemen. But it's hard to know which defensive lineman they could or would take at 11.
Yeah.
There are good defensive tackles who are going to be there for them in round 2, round 3. So do they just take a tackle? And this is a team that has put a lot of emphasis on the offensive line. Who was the guy, the one who's in Denver now, is the right tackle? I can't remember his name.
Mike McGlinchey.
They took him in this kind of range, like 11th, 10th
9th
overall.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if if the Seahawks would minded to take him at 18, maybe the Niners would take him earlier. I don't personally. I would not be a huge fan of this move, but if they do it, Jeff, as I said with the Charles Cross pick, which I didn't really like, I'm not going to argue with them for taking an offensive lineman at 18. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see how it goes. So it's funny you mentioned Tyler Booker, because I just want to go off on this before we move on to the next thing we're going to talk about. I love Tom McShay. Like, self-confessed huge fan of that Todd McShay show, which has been fantastic. However, he said at the combine, Tyler Booker's going to go a lot earlier than people think. Like, whoa, he's going to go a lot earlier than people think. Like, and I'm thinking, well, what does he mean? Like 6th overall to Pete? Like, what does he mean here? Like, who's he? How high are we talking? And then, without saying anything, he's suddenly not in the first round. And I want to know what's going on. Now, Todd is doing a show on Monday about the offensive lineman. Maybe he will clarify what has happened there. If it is purely just the testing that has sunk Tyler Booker from he's going to go in the top 15 higher than you think to I've not even got him in the first round. But that's the one that interests me, Jeff, because of the Aaron Banks that you just said. Like Aaron Banks was more explosive. He had a slightly better vertical jump, but his 10-yard split is exactly the same as Tyler Booker's. His 40 is exactly the same as Tyler Booker's. Tyler Booker's short shuttle is way better than Aaron Banks's, but his 3-cone, strangely, is way worse than Aaron Banks's. So they're kind of the same player. And if you get to round 2, Jeff, Mel Kiper had him going 47 overall. I'm telling you now, if he gets to 47 and the Seahawks haven't jumped up like 4 spots to stop him going to Arizona, I'll be annoyed. Because if you can get him there, then I want to see him in Seattle. I don't care what the scheme is. Like he is a plug and play left guard.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I still like the idea of Booker. And if you could get him in second round, that's even better. Like for me, it's just like I get it. I get the quickness. I heard Trevor Sikkema on his podcast this week. They were doing a mock draft and they were trying to figure out this kind of exact scenario that you're going through almost every day on your show. He's like, what do they do if Zabel's gone? And they literally had a whole segment kind of panicking. And they ended up drafting Malachi Starks, which I thought you'd found interesting. They literally went through like they never had gone through that scenario where Zabel goes. And the one thing I heard Trevor say was like, if they take Trevor Booker here, this is like a catastrophe. Like this would be a failure in this system. And I'm like, I'm just thinking of how many times in the last 2 years have they lost games because they couldn't convert a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1? Like, maybe I'm making this too simple, but like they lost the Rams game last year, probably cost them the division, the playoffs. They couldn't convert 2 plays for a yard. They have no leader in this offensive line group. And if you just need to push someone off the ball, I don't think there's anyone better in this draft. And so to me, like I get the limitations, but like I can't come out here and hammer them for not addressing their guard, not having a leader in their offensive line room, and then come back and be like, well, his foot quickness isn't good enough. Like, I like Tyler Booker. I think he's going to be a good player. I think people are overreacting to the testing a little much, but as you said, the testing numbers, and you made the correlation to all those successful players. I get it. But again, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. I want someone who can push someone off the ball at the goal line. How bad has this team been at the goal line in this last couple of years? Short yardage. I think Tyler Booker has enough where he can play in this system. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would be fine with it.
So here's the thing that interests me about it. I think we are going to learn quite a lot about stuff that we don't know now in 2 weeks. Because if the most important thing is to get off the line, Jeff, pull to the opposite side of the field and go and hammer somebody, or if it's just to peel off the line, run out into space and get up to the second level and hammer somebody, then just go and draft Chase Lunt, whatever. Because that's what he does over and over again. But I just have a hard time believing that that's the only thing that matters. And what you just said there is what I keep coming back to, is there are going to be points in the game where even if you're an outside or a wide zone, you're going to need a yard. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, like I say, red zone. Or whatever it is, or it's that, hey, you're winning by 7 and there's 10 minutes left in the game and you just want to run the ball up the freaking middle and kill the clock. And you've got Tyler Booker in front of you, just mowing people out of the way. And also the other thing is, it's not that he can't move. It's just he's not very fast. So there is plenty of tape of him getting outside. There is tape of him getting up to the second level. Is he as good at that as Charles Grant is? No. But to what extent is it? I'm trying to think of a player. Like Tate Ratledge is a good example. Tate Ratledge, unbelievable athlete, Jeff. It's very hard to find tape of him rushing out into space and getting up to the second level. Very hard. And therefore, are we going to say that he can't do it? Or are we going to say that he can do it because he runs a 4.95? I don't know. And that's, but with Booker, he does do it. It's just that he then gets outrun by Jalen Milroe on the edge. And it looks bad. But Jalen Milroe is like freaking lightning. So I just think if you want somebody, like right now, Seattle has a big, wide hole at left guard. Like they have nothing. And if you draft him, wherever it is, now you've got something. Now you can go and play a game on Sunday. Now you can line up and feel good about who's playing left guard, whether he's the perfect scheme fit or not. And you've got the physicality, the attitude, the tone. I want the identity of the team to be the offensive line. You can't have the identity be the offensive line without people like Abe Lucas and Tyler Booker. It can't be Charles Cross. It ain't going to be Olu Oluwatimi or Christian Haynes. You need people like this. So I just hope that they're at least willing to consider doing this. And if they're not, I hope the plan is good. Because if you just want people who are going to run outside, you might as well wait to the 4th round and draft Chase Lund, and then wait to the 5th round and draft Drew Kendall and say that's that. Because that's what they do. But if you want the players who can actually maybe win you a playoff game and can be a little bit more varied, then you've got to consider people like Tyler Booker, haven't you?
And the fear of mine of just like they kind of overthink this. John Benson's a little like Tom Cable, and they're kind of looking for the perfect fit, but never comes along. And Booker goes to Baltimore or something, and I can just see it, and just becomes a stud. And we're just sitting there like we passed on another one of these guys again. And so we'll see. We're going to learn a lot based on who they brought in on visits. It doesn't give you a clue of what they're going to do, but it seems like Benton is very specific in who he wants. And to his credit, them and the guys in New Orleans last year got career years out of a lot of those guys. Cesar Ruiz had the best numbers by PFF in his career. Eric McCoy, when healthy, looked really good. Lucas Patrick, who they passed on this year, even was a competent offensive lineman. And so they have all the pieces here. Benton and Rick Dennison and Justin Ouden and all these guys. I just hope they're not what I would call Tom Cable in this thing and think they could just put J.R. Sweezy in there and pass on a really good player. So my hope is that they just get someone really good. And so I do like Donovan Jackson. I do like Gray Zabel, but it's just hard if they literally lost the division last year because they couldn't get a yard in 2 tries. And I think the play that summed up the Ryan Grubb era was that goal line sequence in the Jets game. Do you remember that? Where they had, I think, 9 plays at the goal line. It's like 7 of them were passes. And when they tried to run, it was a disaster. And they end up throwing like slants at Sauce Gardner and fades.
It was like let's try the fade play. Let's try
like
the bootleg
one route
play.
Sauce is good at. Like you throw it right at it. It was so bad. And I'm just like, you can't. And the one game they looked like the Mike McDonald team was that Arizona game where they just gapped the hell out of you. And that was the best they looked all year. They looked like a Super Bowl team in that game. But we never saw that again. And so I love the idea of the wide zone, but like I don't want them just all of a sudden passing on guys who could be really good just because I think that would be a big mistake. That's a mistake this team's made too many times, frankly.
Yeah, agreed. And it does enable, look, if he's going to go to where Mel Kiper's saying, and presumably where Tom McShay is saying, and people like this, and it is going to be a round 2 thing, I think you've got the ammo there to be aggressive if you need to be. And if he's going to last at 47, I mean, what's it going to take to move up 5 picks? I mean, you might be able to like flip a 4th for a 5th or something. I mean, God, yeah. It won't cost you anything. So the next thing I want to talk about, funny enough, Tyler Booker is involved in this conversation. Now, I noticed a video that was Joel Klatt's rankings. And I thought I'd bring this to the table just because he's not somebody whose rankings get discussed that much. And now the caveat with this, Jeff, is he had Armand Membu at 15 on his big board. And after everything that Armand Membu has done in the last few weeks, there is absolutely no way you can have him at 15 on your big board and have anybody take that seriously. Like, he has to be in the top 10 all day long. He also had Ashton Genty at 11. For me, whether you want to take a running back early or not, it's beside the point. In the terms of a big board, he has to be in the top 5. Now, you put him in the top 5 and go, I wouldn't draft him in the top 5, fine. But he can't be down as the 11th best player on your board. That's just nonsense. He has to be in the top 5.
I think he's got to be at least number 3 on your board.
Yeah.
And I would not take him in the top 5. I'm like you, but like, come on. Like, he is one of the surest things and one of the
He
best
he might
prospects there is.
he might be pound for pound the best, most talented player, but
Yeah.
you may take him 10th overall. That's just the way it is. So the thing is when he got to sort of the range that Seattle did. So Malachi Starks was in the 20s, and I think he's a legit option for Seattle if he lasts. At 19, he had Emeka Ibuka. At 18, he had Tyler Booker, and at 17, he had Kenneth Grant. So, the pick at 8, so the player who's graded at 18 is Booker, and the two flanking Booker are Egbuka, who I've talked about a lot, and Grant. Do you sort of see those kind of three players and Chuck Starks into the mix as options, Jeff? And if we want to throw other options in there, I mean, I think Zabel is an option. I just get the sense that his stock's just regressing a little bit at the minute. Like he's going lower and lower on the mocks. Somebody said to me recently that I wouldn't take him in the first round. I just get the sense that he's just coming back down to earth a little bit. But I would think he would be an option still. I think Ezaragu could be a player who they consider as well. Is there anybody else? Or what about those three that I mentioned there, 17, 18, 19, the players that Klatt's got in the sort of that immediate range for Seattle?
That's about right. The one who I think will be gone, and I know you've talked about this, is Colston Loveland.
Yes.
I think the Seahawks would pick him if he was there. But I'm with you. With all the bad part of this draft is once you get to pick 7. All the people are like, why didn't Seattle lose more games last year? Pick 7 is a horrible place to be because there's no one who jumps off the page unless you really want one of these tight ends. So I think one of these teams between New Orleans and Indianapolis, someone's going to end up taking Chicago maybe, but I think he would be the guy. But I've heard the team has a lot of affinity for Kenneth Grant, but I struggle to think that's their pick. With the variety of defensive tackles in this draft, and I have questions about whether that's a good use of a first-round pick to begin with because he's not a big pass rush guy. I have questions. You've talked about his motor, and some people have him.
Jeff, what about, if you put him in there, look, let's say they do it. You've then got to, he's got to play X number of downs, justify top 20 pick.
Yeah.
Murphy's got to play X number of downs, justify it. You've got to get Leonard Williams on the field, and you've just brought back Jaron Reed. How do you do all this stuff?
Because, you have Jonathan Hankins snaps you have to replace, but that's not a huge snap eater unless someone gets injured. And there's almost a point where there's too much investment in one group. And that would almost be a bit of overkill. And I know they do need nose tackle to kind of unlock, but then if you were going to take him, you probably just shouldn't have brought back Jaron Reed. You should have probably filled lower spots on the roster. So I'm with you. I think it's an overkill investment where it's great to be great at that spot. No doubt. But he would not be the guy that I would guess. And I don't think it's a guy who I think is logical. Starks is the one I can't get out of my mind. And the way I've been thinking about this, but it's just so curious, is it John making the pick? Is it Mike? I know Mike's been way more involved. I'm just trying to think of guys who I can see ending up in Baltimore. And Starks just I don't know, I could just see it. Just him as in a Ravens jersey. His style is, I think that's a really, really good option. Ezaragu's the one. I know someone tied him to them this week. That's another one where they have so many bodies there. It's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around it. And maybe they don't sign Boye Mafe as a result, or DeMarcus Lawrence on a short-term deal. Nwosu, who knows if he's back beyond this year. But, you would then have 5 bodies at edge rusher. It's hard it's kind of the same problem. So I like Ezaragu. I don't think that's where I'm guessing they would go, but this is that weird spot they're in where everyone just thinks maybe they pivot to receiver. And I saw ESPN today say that they think they're going to want a big-bodied receiver early. And I don't think Ted McMillan will be there, but if he is,
I don't think he will.
I don't think I would not be excited about that.
I think it's going to be, we're all going to be relieved when he goes at 12.
But would they take Matthew Golden?
I don't know if they would or not.
He's someone I'm wondering about.
He's said to be well liked not by the Seahawks, I mean by people at Texas. People liked him, so because they are very risk averse. I still think Egbuka's the thing with Egbuka is it's going to come down to how they view him. If they think that he can be Amon-Ra St. Brown, then they absolutely could take him. If they think he's such an awesome person and we love him, like all teams will, and we love everything about him, but we just don't think the upside is there, then like if they think he's the 30th best player in the draft instead of the 18th, then you can't take him at 18. I think it'll come down to that. But I do think he is a legit option for them because some people, Jeremiah says he's the 17th best player in the draft. Kuiper says 18th. Like some people genuinely think he is that good. So I think he is an option. I think Malachi Starks definitely is. The only thing with Kenneth Grant is I've seen one or two people wonder whether he's like a Dexter Lawrence. And if he is, then sign me up. I mean, like if you could chuck Dexter Lawrence next to Leonard Williams, is obviously the pairing they had in New York, and you've got Byron Murphy. I mean, if you can find a way to get them all on the field, then you could be a devastating interior offensive line. But it just seems to me like it could be overkill. I want to come back to the tight ends because I wrote about this. I've done so many things this week. I think it might have been yesterday. And I just wondered, Jeff, I can imagine a scenario where Warren and Loveland are both on the board at 10. Alternatively, by the way, if the Jets take Warren, it could mean that Membu's there at 10.
Yeah.
So, because let's say Membu doesn't go to the Raiders. The Jets are going to take Membu or one of the tight ends in that situation.
Yeah.
So if they took Warren and said, we need Warren, at 8, the Panthers ain't taking offensive line. They're just not.
No. They're covered there.
The Saints are probably going to take a quarterback after the news today. So Membu's there at 10. The thing is, the Bears aren't taking him at 10 either. No. But you ain't going to be able to trade with the Niners at 11. So you'd
have to jump them.
If the Bears were interested, the Bears don't have a fourth. So they've got the first 2 seconds and a third, but they don't have a fourth. Now, if they thought we'd quite like, let's say, an extra pick to move down a few spots, like I was like looking at this. 2 years ago, the Steelers moved from 17 to 14, and they only gave up a fourth. A fourth. Now, this is 18 to 10. This is a lot more. But you have 2/3. I don't know. You've got 2 seconds, 2/3. If Membu was there, how aggressive would you want to be to get the most explosive, athletic, aggressive offensive lineman you could get, who, by the way, has got a freaking awesome zone blocking grade? I mean, he'd be perfect for this team. Or if he's gone at 7, how much do you want to move up to get Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland? And let's say you don't move up to 10. If it gets to 13 and he's still on the board, and you know the Colts are going to take Colston Loveland, you could move up to 14, at 13 with the Dolphins. They've got a lot of needs. You chuck them a 3rd round pick, Jeff. You give him 92 or something like that. You end up with Colston Loveland. Now, I'm not saying I would definitely do this. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying I agree with you that I think the Seahawks want a tight end. And if they could get one of these two, who, by the way, are graded, I think, 4th and 5th best player on Lance Allen's board, 5th and 6th best player on Daniel Jeremiah's board. I think Tom McShay's got them 6th and 7th or something like that.
Yeah.
You're talking about one of the best players in the draft. I just wonder if there's a deal to be done there.
They have the capital to do whatever they want. And everyone assumed they were just talking about moving up the 2nd round because Schneider has never moved up in the 1st round since he's been in Seattle. It's hard to believe, but never in 14 drafts. This is the year where it might make sense. The Membu trade you just brought up, I would do that trade at a drop of a hat. If it just costs you the Geno Smith pick and you can block San Francisco from getting Membu and get potentially like an all-pro level left guard, to me, I would do that in a drop of a hat. I don't know if Schneider would.
I'd consider giving up 52 for Membu.
Yeah, me too. I think he's that special in this draft. And the combination of blocking San Francisco, I think that's a massive win for you. I think you can get him for less, too.
I think if there's a situation where you could get Membu, I just ticks every box. Zone blocking grade, everything about his athleticism and his explosion, the aggressive style of play. I think you could plug him in at guard and you could be looking at somebody within a couple of years who is like an elite offensive lineman. And I just think he's going to go to the Jets at 7.
So do I. I think he might go 4 or 5. I think
Yeah,
Jacksonville might take him.
maybe. I could see that. I think he's better than Will Campbell. The problem is that it seems like the Patriots are so zoned in on, well, Will Campbell played left tackle. Well, that's fine. I'd personally, if I was taking a lineman, I would take Membu first.
So would I. So would I.
But if he somehow got to 10 and Clatt had him at 15, he's bored. So you never know. Let me have a look where Todd McShay had him on his.
McShay was talking about him going 4 yesterday in that podcast.
Yeah. He had him. So this is the thing. Like Todd McShay has Armand Membu 10th on his big board.
Ooh.
I mean, you just don't know, do you? And again, you don't know. Like Todd McShay also said, keep an eye on Jackson Dart with the Jets.
He did. He did.
So let's just imagine Dart goes 7, Sanders goes 9. All of a sudden,
yeah, someone's being pushed down.
You may have both tight ends and Armand Membu there at 10, and you're looking at this and thinking, we've got to go and get one of these 3 players.
The tight ends are interesting because like there's a clear gap between the top 2 and the next 2. But I do like Arroyo and Mason Taylor quite a bit. Like,
yes.
If the pick was like a 3rd round pick to move up to get Loveland, when you could kind of move back and get one of those other guys, I think I'd rather move back, And
Jeff, can I say something that I've said it once on another stream, but I'm going to say it again here.
Yeah.
I would not hate Arroyo at 18.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's if you could slide back a little bit, maybe get an extra 4th rounder, because I don't like where their 4th rounder is now. There's a big gap. I would look at Arroyo. I think Arroyo in this offense could be really nice.
If you took Sam Laporte at 18th overall, no one would be second guessing that now.
No.
And I don't think Arroyo's Sam Laporte, actually. I think he's more like George Kittle. I honestly, I think he has just got that, not the blocking. The blocking will come because he's willing. And Loveland and Warren are terrible blockers. So it's not as if they're way better than that. It's just his ability to attack from all the different positions that you want to attack a modern player. You can put him anywhere. And I know what people say whenever you bring up Arroyo, people go about the injuries and all of this. And I get it. Like, you have to do the medical checks. If I had the medical checks and a doctor was saying you can't take him, I'd be like, bollocks. And I wouldn't take him. Yeah. But if the doctor's telling me, no, feel free. I'm not saying I would take him at 18. I'm just saying that if they did it, I would come on the stream and go, I'm all in on that. Like, I'm not bothered. Like, I'm not bothered. He is, for me, fascinating. A fascinating player. And I think there's a chance he goes to the Eagles at 32. And I think he won't be on the book. People are going to get him at 52. He ain't going to be there.
No, he's not going to be there at 52.
Him and Taylor will go in the top 45. For sure.
Earlier,
yeah, I'm saying top 45 is a worst case for them. Like that, I think that by you're talking at the top of the, and I think, Jeff, that might be the other thing. They may take someone at 18, or they might move back a little bit and then maybe move up from 50. They might say, I think there's a shelf. I think there is a shelf at about pick 45. And I think they may see a player or players in the 30s who they say, if we could just get him, that we'll be happy at 50 with this guy, but we'll be ecstatic with this guy. Let's surrender one of these 5 picks to go and get them. And I Jeff, it worked for Jaron Reed. It worked for DK Metcalf. It worked for Tyler Lockett. It didn't work for Darrell Taylor, but
no, it didn't.
But the other times it has worked doing that, and when they tend to go after players, it tends to work out. So I think there's a reasonable chance there's going to be a trade up in the first 3 rounds from Seattle's point of view.
Yeah, I've been thinking the whole time that 2nd round trade up for a tight end. But as we keep getting closer to this draft and we see all the teams and there's so few like sure things, the drop off at tight end, and I wonder if this is what John was alluding to, it's pretty big. Like, you might like some of the guys on day 3, the Mitchell Evans, the Luke Lachey's. Gunnar Helm had a horrible combine. He was hurt apparently, but there's just a sizable gap in terms of like the kind of tight end that could be really good in the system versus another tight end 2 or 3. And the day 3 guys are fine. Like they look like day 3 guys. But I think the Kubiak guys, I think they really want they tried to sign Juwan Johnson. Like that came out later. I think Noah Fant is being on this roster right now as a hedge. I think if the draft falls away for them, at least they have Fant for a year. They can push this off. I think tight end is going to be very high. A lot of people focus on receiver. I wonder if tight end is a bigger focus of them early on of what they can do with 12 personnel and what they can do. And that's where I struggle with the Ibuka thing because they have so many slot receivers already. I think Ibuka's a really good player, by the way. And I said this before even we had Cooper Kupp. I'm like, this guy's going to be one of those guys that's going to make all these big catches in the playoffs. It's going to be annoying if he ends up like on the Rams or something. He could be like a Robert Woods souped up version of him. And Robert Woods crushed the Seahawks for years. But I think I like the idea of a tight end and what it could do for this offense. I think they definitely need another receiver in there because Cooper Kupp at best is a 2-year option. At best. I don't even know if it'll be a 2-year option. And then they're pretty limited behind that. MVS is a one-trick pony. Jake Bobo's nothing. They don't have another guy there. And so I can see why receiver is a big need for them. But man, I really like what they got from AJ Barner last year. I think he's the perfect tight end 2 with some tight end 1 upside. If you can get like a really good receiving tight end, I think that could really unlock a lot of this offense and make them a really hard team to cover.
I'm down for it. I just wonder if it just feels as if that could be a position that they think we're going to go after this. And I don't mind an aggressive approach to this draft. I'd rather than come out with like impact players. I'd rather than come out of a draft where we look in 3 years, Jeff, and go, wow. You know, they've had drafts in the past where they've had a whole bunch of picks and they've stuck and picked. You know, that was the Malik McDowell one, wasn't it? Where they had about 4 or 5 day 2 picks and they came away with basically Shaquille Griffin and nothing else. We've done all of that. You know, if they think that's a player, we're going to go and get him. That's another player, we're going to go and get him. Like if they come away with 3, brilliant players from this draft out of the 10 picks they start with, that's a really good deal. So I'm up for them being aggressive. There are 3 super chats in a minute. If you have any topics you think we haven't covered, or if there's anything you want to say, or if you just want to support the channel, send them in. We're going to finish with those. But this is the sort of the next topic I had, Jeff. It's Will Howard. I have decided that this is not a Seahawks point I'm making here, but this is a general NFL point. If I was a team that had a bad quarterback or needed a young quarterback, I'd be drafting Will Howard. And
did you watch him on Gruden?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I just watched it today.
So I really like Will Howard. When I was watching that, because you know what Gruden's like, and I've said this on a couple of videos already. Like he's just barking jargon at him. Like he's just throwing like, and then if it's cover 3, I want you to do this. But then if they switch to cover 2, I want you to do this play. And then if they blitz, you need to get out of that and then get into this play. Now get up, stand up now, and give me that play call. And Will Howard just did it as if he'd been studying it for the last 6 months. And his everything about him was as if it was like Peyton Manning was doing the whole thing. And I get it. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but it was impressive. And with all due respect to Riley Leonard, who then did the next one, he got him to stand up and say, "Can you do your snap count?" And he just goes. And in fairness to Riley Leonard, he made it funny. He made a joke of it. But
I watched it.
So he's self-aware, Riley Leonard. But it was to show the difference. And Gruden went very easy on Riley Leonard, whereas he pushed and he tested Will Howard, and he sat there looking at him like he was his long-lost son. And he's looking at that one play that we've all seen where he's about to get hammered against Notre Dame, and he gets the ball out off without any kind of backlift or anything. He's no step into the throw, and Gruden's going, "That's a first round quarterback. That's a first round player." And I just. So that's the first thing is just that I really enjoyed that Gruden video. The thing that I said on the stream about 2 weeks ago was that I spoke to someone who is unbelievably hard to please when it comes to quarterbacks. Like, so unbelievably hard to please when it comes to quarterbacks. And he just said, he's a good player. He's a good player. Second round. Maybe even late first. And I was like, what? I was like, he's going to go in. And then I start seeing Jalen Milrose getting invited to New York. And, there's been like Tyler Shucks had this great uprising. And I suddenly started to think, this guy's going to go in the top 50. And it could be anywhere. as it could be for Milrow. Like it just, I think they're going to go a bit earlier than people think. And I could see a team like the Jets or somebody like that taking Howard in the second round. And then there's two other things. So I did this article on quarterbacks a while ago, and I'll share this on the screen, Jeff, because it's just easier for people to see it. And okay, so this is the list of all the quarterbacks since 2021 who have had an 80 in QBR. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 first round picks. A second round pick. A third round pick who, when we went to the third round because he had a broken leg.
Yeah.
Matt Corral, who had character issues, and Ian Book, who had physical limitations. Everybody else went in the first round. And the quarterbacks this year who have a plus 80 are Cam Ward, so he's going to join that list of first rounders. Dylan Gabriel is not. I think you put him in this kind of range here with Hooker and Corral and Book because he's small. Curtis Rourke's not going to go there. He's got an injury. We don't know what he could have achieved if he'd have done all of the pre-draft process, gone to the Senior Bowl, gone to the Combine. The only others are Jackson Dart, safe bet that he's going to go in the first round. Jalen Milrow, everyone's wondering where he's going to go now he's been invited to the draft. And Will Howard. And again, I'm not saying that he's going to go first round, Jeff, but the chances are what that list tells me is that there's a good chance he will go earlier than people are expecting. And that maybe he will go in the second round. I don't know if he's going to sneak into the first, but I think second round is really solid for this guy. And just the final thing, in the last few minutes, the 33rd team tweeted this out. Completion percentage on throws that went 10 plus yards for quarterbacks in this draft. Will Howard leads the whole class with a 62.8% completion percentage ahead of Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward, Curtis Walk, Shadur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Cal McCord, Tyler Shook, Jalen Milrow, Quinn Ewers at the end. He is leading this. The character, the pro readiness, the size and the athleticism, the analytics, Jeff, it's all adding to a player who may not be great at the next level, but I don't think you're going to make a mistake with this guy. I think he will produce as an average starter at least, and there are some teams out there who could use an average starter right now.
This is going to sound annoying to the people who criticize every time I agree with you, but the people on my show make fun of me because my favorite quarterback in that second round group is Will Howard, and it's been the whole time. And they think he sucks. The guys on my show think he sucks. They're like, he doesn't have any special qualities. I don't know if he's going to be a great player. I don't even know if he's going to be a good player. But what he did in the last 4 games is different than anything I saw from almost all of these quarterbacks. And that just 4-game sample, I think Kurt Warner said it was better than anything any of these quarterbacks put on tape. And who knows if...
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt, Jeff, the 4 games in the playoffs, he had a 96.4 QBR, near perfect. His NFL passer rating was 126.8, and Ohio State were 50% on third down for the entire playoffs.
And what I saw during that 4-game was just something different than I've seen from all these guys. I've watched Jalen Milrow play. He's a really good runner. I don't know if he's a quarterback. Tyler Shook is a late emerger. His age, a lot of the stuff with him scares me. I get why people like him. I liked Howard. I don't love Quinn Ewers, but projecting the Seahawks might like. I think Ewers is going to go. Tony Pauline has made very clear a lot of teams like him, and I come back to Howard and then watching him on Gruden, and I'm like, my God, his EQ, his awareness, just listening to him talk, his confidence. And I've heard a lot of people in the building just have great respect. I wonder what the Raiders are going to be. They have Chip Kelly in there now, who was with them last year. I would bet on Will Howard over all these guys. I don't know if any of these guys would turn out, but I think if I was betting on one, at least we saw that sample, the 4 games. And I like this offense relies on a lot of boots, a lot of on the move. And they use Howard a lot in the playoffs, especially in short yardage runs. And we saw what they did with Taysom Hill and New Orleans in that system. But he's not like a flat-footed, unathletic guy. He can move a little bit. And so I think he'd actually be an interesting project. And I can see John liking him. And John is obviously very connected with John Gruden. He loved Russell Wilson, and John was up with John Gruden in Green Bay, so I think they're pretty connected. So just watching him, I'm like, this guy's a dude. Like, he was awesome. He was aware. Like, some of the guys on that show you watch, you're just like, this is not for me. And I don't know. I like Will Howard. Like, second round feels a bit high for me, even just because of the opportunity cost. But if that's where you have to take him, like, I'm not going to crush them. But I'll say this: the guys on my show, they make fun of me because I like this guy. Like,
I'd take it. I'd take him in round 2.
yeah, like I picked him in the 4th round in a mock we did recently, and people were ripping me for it. So,
Do you know what the thing is, Jeff? Is this is why quarterbacks fail, because they're like Riley Leonard. Their pre-snap stuff is looking at the sideline, getting the play call, going up to the line, having a good old like 10 seconds there, then coming back into the gun, looking at the sideline. The adjustment comes from the coaches. They then call the play they're actually going to run, and they just throw it to the one person that they're told to throw it to, or the two people they're second read. Okay, that's college football. And they go to the NFL and they have someone like John Gruden going, and if it's this, you need to do this. And if it's this, and you need to do this. You need to get our tight end, our play, when this coverage is this at one time or maybe multiple times in this game. And they just go, whoa, I'm drowning in information. This is just so hard. And they turn up at training camp and they've spent the whole summer studying, stressing. I bet the anxiety's through the roof as they're learning how to run an NFL offense. And they get out there the first day having had no sleep the night before, Jeff, because they are shitting themselves, because they've got to go out in front of 90 other players and however many coaches, and every single person is looking at them and judging them. And if you suck that first day, you know that veteran cornerback is going to be telling all his buddies about how bad the first round pick or second round pick is. And you better believe the receivers are going, I can't believe we got rid of Geno Smith for this guy. And you've got all of that going on. And then you turn up the next day and you're even worse. And you just collapse as a player. And then you've got Will Howard, who's going to walk in there and he's going to know pretty much everything straight away. And he's going to be comfortable. And you know what? The veterans are going to go, this rookie's pretty good. And it's half the battle. It's knowing the language. It's speaking French before you go to France.
yeah.
And too many of these NFL quarterbacks they don't even know how to say bonjour, un baguette, s'il vous plaît. And they get to the NFL and they're just like, I don't know what to do. And that's why that plus the analytics, plus the physicality, plus the winning. He didn't just win the national championship. He won the Big 12 with Kansas State. They've only won it 3 times since the turn of the century. He was the quarterback for one of those times. He has won. He has performed. He has come back from adversity. Is he going to ever be a top 10 NFL quarterback? I don't think so. But I think he's got a chance to be a starter in this league. And I think if you can get a starting quarterback in round 2, with the chance to become maybe something pretty good if you just rest him for a year, let him marinate. I'd take him in round 2 if I was the Seahawks. Now, I think other teams will take him before Seattle picks, but we'll see if I'm right or wrong on that, Jeff. And if he lasts to round 3, Jesus. Bloody hell.
That would be my ideal sweet spot, because we're talking tight end here. We're talking... We better save a pick for a guard. So we need a receiver. We need a tight end. It's like, Sam Darnold is obviously, he's got a pretty good upside as well. So I do think they need to draft a quarterback on day 2, ideally. For me, the sweet spot would be round 3, but I don't think Will Howard will be there at 80.
No, which is also another reason why they might brought Drew Lock in, is that maybe there is just going to be that rush. And that's why I was saying, I think if Howard goes early and Milroe goes early and then maybe Kuhn Ewers goes early and Shuck.
Yeah.
You think, well, who else is there? And I still think they would take one later on. But then you're looking at, well, maybe they take a flyer on a Curtis Rourke in round 6. Like it's not, they don't have a round 6 pick, like round 5 maybe. Like it becomes harder to do. So it's gonna be interesting though to see what they do there. So I'm fascinated by this draft, Jeff. Even though it's not the most star-studded draft, I feel like there's a lot of options, a lot of things the Seahawks could do. And that, for that reason, it makes it hard to predict what they're going to do. There's not sort of an obvious thing. There's a lot of options there for what they could do.
No, this is one of the more interesting drafts that I've followed, because by pick 5, it's like I have no clue what's going to happen. And I can usually have a good sense of like last year the domino obviously was Penix and it led to Murphy falling down the board. But for most teams, you had a clear idea it was going to be quarterbacks high, offensive left tackles high, receivers high. You know what most teams are looking at. This draft's weird because the worst place to be is like pick 6 to 12. Because like what you would have got last year, like Brock Bowers would probably be like the 4th pick in this draft. And he went. So there's so many teams I just don't know. And Seattle, there's just got a multitude of options. And that's where the scenario you presented, I heard the one on Sigma's show. It's like if that offensive guard that everyone thought isn't going to be there, like there's so many different ways this thing can go. And there's a lot of cool options. So I'm so interested. The round 1 pick is going to just set the table for everything. You posted that Mike Mayock clip where he was literally brought up to Seahawks and he thought they'd go receiver first, but I think it might be tight end. I think it might be safety. Ideally, the easy pick would be the guard and just make everyone happy. But if Zabel's gone or someone doesn't follow you that you like, or you don't even like Zabel that much, you got to pick another position. And so whether that's receiver, tight end, defense, it's very hard to telegraph what the Seahawks are going to do at this point. They have so many picks. They don't have a ton of like huge needs, but they do have some areas they need to tighten up. But predicting what they're going to do is next to impossible. I don't think any people predicted they would have ended up with Witherspoon. I don't think anyone predicted they'd end up like Murphy was a popular pick, but like days before the draft, it seemed like he was a lock to go in the top 10. So
here's an interesting thought. What would they if they'd have signed Will Fries? One, would they have played him at right guard?
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean Christian Haynes moves to the left, or is he just Christian Haynes just a bust at this point? Or let's say their interest in Fries could also mean that they were sort of anticipating somewhat that maybe that wouldn't be their first pick already at that point. And yes, they've missed out, but they've just gone, well, it is what it is. We like these guys in day 2 and whatever. I just find that interesting. I think they could do anything in that first pick. I think they're just going to take the best player, and it could be Starks, it could be a receiver, it could be a defensive lineman, it could be offensive lineman, and that's what makes it interesting, Jeff. It's going to be interesting to see what it is, and I still think that moving up for a tight end is not out of the question, or moving down. And here's one thing we haven't discussed, and this will be the final thing before we get into the super chats. You saw the McShay mock, right? And he had Cleveland moving up to 15.
Yeah.
And getting 67. And then he had the Giants moving up to 24 and getting 65 to Minnesota. I would, if they're prepared to move up to 24 with that deal, I would take that offer that Minnesota got at 24. I would move to 34 and get 65 and a pick next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, you need the pick next year. And so, 34 is the sweet spot of this draft. It's the point where you're going to get a good player. If you like a quarterback, that's a good spot. I think the tight end is a good spot. I think guard is a really good spot. If you like the Donovan Jackson or the Tate Ravledge, I think they'd be comfortable picks there. Zabel might even be there. But I think that's the sweet spot of this draft. Seattle's at Seattle's at like the pivot point, and which is why it's so hard to predict. They're going to have to take like the first of something. It's going to be either the first of the tight ends left, the first of the receivers left, the first of the interior offensive line. They kind of have to pivot off something. I can't see someone falling to them. They're just too low, and there's too many teams in front of them with similar needs. So when you're at the 30s, there's that next tier of players, and there's a lot of them, and they're all pretty good. Like, I think you could find a receiver there that's pretty good. I think you could, like a Jaden Higgins, I think could be a really interesting pick there. I think a tight end could be a really interesting pick there. I think a guard, a quarterback. I still think there's not a huge difference in terms of the talent that's there. You're not going to get Malachi Starks there. You're not going to get Ezraku there, but I still think you'd get a pretty good player. And then you'd open up another possibility to move up and get a pick next year. So I don't think it's a crazy idea at all. Because I think really the hardest part about this draft is if you're not trading up with one of those teams trying to get a quarterback, who are people moving up for? And once you're at 18, it's so hard to imagine trade downs. And nobody. Let's see who, unless there's some team that just loves Matthew Golden or something. And
here's the thing: is McShay's and Kuiper's mocks, Booker, Egbuka, Arroyo, all available at 33 and 34.
Yeah.
And if you can get them and get an extra pick, I mean, then you're picking 50, 52, 65, or 67. I mean, you can get if you wanted to, you could wait to the 65, 67 to get offensive line.
Yeah.
Or you could do 52 and 50 and that pick if you want to go offensive line twice. I mean, that just, to me, that you're getting the same value player there. And here's the other thing. Let's say Jackson Dart goes 9. Let's say the Browns do trade up to 15 to get Shador. If you're the Giants and you're thinking, we need to take a quarterback here because we might get fired if we don't have some kind of hope for the future.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what McShay was suggesting they're going to do because they're moving up to 24 to make sure they get Jalen Milroe. Well, all of a sudden, those quarterbacks have gone and you've got Pittsburgh on the horizon at 21.
Yep. Who's met with Milroe?
So you say to the Giants, listen, you might want to move up to the 20s to get Milroe. Well, just come and get him at 18. We'll give you the same deal that you're going to give the Vikings. And you move down into that spot, and all of a sudden, that doesn't sound so unrealistic. And I would take that deal in a heartbeat. And then Jeff, with another pick, you don't even if you want to take someone at 34 and then move up to 36, 37, 38, you've got another pick in which you don't mind using to do that. You manipulate the board in your favor. You maybe take the player at 34 that you're going to take at 18 anyway, and then have the extra ammunition to move up from 50 to make sure you get 2 players in the sweet spot of the draft. I mean, it sounds great. It's a great. People have gone nodding along, going, "Yeah, well, sounds very good, that Rob." But it's very hard to execute that. But it'd be very, very appealing if they could pull something like that. It would be an A-star draft.
I imagine if he gave Schneider a couple drinks, and he would say that's his dream.
Just a couple.
Just a couple drinks. I think Schneider likes to have some fun. But I think if you got him in a truth serum, whatever you want to say, I think that would be close to his dream scenario in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Hawks fan Matt Man, will you be upset or disappointed if the Seahawks don't draft a quarterback this year? I will not be upset or disappointed. I think they will draft a quarterback at some stage, but I will not be upset or disappointed, Jeff. I'm on my board. I don't have any quarterback graded. The highest quarterbacks I have in the 2-3 range, and that's Ward, Howard, Dart, Shook, Sanders. So I don't have anybody higher than that. I find it very hard to be upset at not taking a player who's graded in that range.
Yeah, I'm a hard no on that. I would love for them to draft a quarterback because they just haven't for so long. But Sam Darnold's 27, 28 years old? Like, Darnold's a pretty young quarterback. Like, he was a top 3 pick not that long ago. Like, he's still a pretty good prospect. Like, if it was Geno, I'd feel a lot more need to draft a guy. Geno would be 35 this year. I'm not saying Darnold's better than Geno, but Darnold is essentially like drafting a quarterback. Like, he might be the guy. And then at that point, it's like you don't really need another quarterback. I don't know if he will. The odds are probably that he will just be okay, and we'll have to replace him in 2 years. But if he's the guy, like, build the infrastructure around him. I'm totally okay with that. See what you got. And you can always draft one next year. And I know that's annoying to say that now because it's been how long, but if you're reaching to take that second tier of quarterbacks and you're passing up something else that really might help you, that's going to be a hard one for me. I'm a hard no on that.
David says, looking back over the drafts you've scouted, who are your biggest personal scouting hits and also a player you thought would be good but wasn't? Oh, wow, David. I didn't see this question, David. It's probably a bit too late in the day for this because, you see, the problem with this is the first draft I did was 2008. And, you know, I have had some really great hits and I've had some whiffs like everybody does. And, I mean, there's a whole bunch of players I thought were going to be really good that didn't end up being good. But what I would also say is that a lot of people always like bring up like things that I said in 2011 and 12, and I'm thinking, like, I was 3 years into this thing.
Yeah,
I had no idea what I was doing. So I don't know. I mean, I do you know what, David? I apologize if you send me. You've sent it as a super chat, so I need to give that some thought and give that a proper answer. If you just send it in as a normal message on the next stream, I will have thought of some. But there's a whole bunch of offensive linemen I used to like and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had Zach Tom as one of your favorite guys.
Yeah.
That would be a really good one. Abe Lucas, I thought, but for
I
me,
liked
like,
TJ Watt, but I mean, he was a Watt, so.
yeah, I really liked Brian Branch. I didn't understand the league's view of him. I thought he was the 10th best player in that draft, and you do way more film work than me. I really like John Michael Schmitz in that same draft, and he's been at best, pretty average. Trying to think of other ones that I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, so that's a first round pick. So I don't know how exciting that is, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to go back and look at some of these names. I've really gone into the draft the last couple years, but yeah, you've had some good offensive line pulls over the years, though, I would say.
There's quite a few. I really like Joel Batonio. There's a whole bunch of it. I'm trying to look through. I'm looking through the all-decade team to see if there's anybody who was somebody I was particularly loved. I really liked Mike Evans back in the day, but then he was always considered like a top 15 pick. I did actually, funny enough, I really liked Calais Campbell in the first, when I first started talking about the draft. Yeah, but I didn't expect him to play for this long. So, I mean, that's crazy. Oh, Fred Warner was somebody that was like a blog favorite.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Cam Jordan, I thought was going to go 3rd overall. He went like 23rd.
Turned out pretty good.
Yeah, but I loved Cam Jordan. I'm at 76 now, so I'm nearly done and looking through the list.
I also really like Chandler Jones the year he was drafted.
Chandler Jones, good shot.
He was a great player, but then he kind of went off the rails, lost some mental health stuff. So don't know how much credit I'm going to take there, but
go
ahead.
I think the amazing thing is, Jeff, though, is that I feel like when I look back on those days of like when I started the blog, you just realize how little you knew back then. Like when you've been doing it for so long, you just know what to look for and what's a red herring and stuff like that. And you're still learning. Like I learned from the last draft to not make that mistake again and stuff like this. You constantly learn.
And the information out there now is way more in depth in terms of the testing you get and the RAS scores and all these things you can learn about players. And so many people do good work, and there's just so many people who are ranking players, and I don't know what their criteria is. And back then, it felt like I was just trying to learn some names from watching the Combine show with Mike Mayock, and that was really, there wasn't podcasts back then. And it's like the mock draft simulator, I think, has been a big tool to help me learn players in terms of like beyond the first round, because you get a couple mock drafts a year and that was it. Walter Football used to put out like that 2-round mock
Walter draft. Football was like the place to go, wasn't it?
That was where I used to learn everything from, and like they feel like completely non-existent at this point. So the amount of information that's out there with the simulators and the podcasts, like I remember when Anthony Bradford got drafted, all the people were like, "Let's look at his RAS score." Now that dude plays and he can't move. So it's like we have so much information now. It's just knowing what to do with it, and it's been really cool to see the draft thing kind of pick up in the last couple of years.
I remember like back in the day, like on my old job, like my lunch break, like I'll just have a look on Walter Football to see if he's done a new mock draft. And like I was like when Deshaun Jackson was being mocked to the Seahawks in the late first and stuff. It was when they took the USC pass rusher in
Lawrence Jackson.
That was it. Yeah, I think it was that draft. I remember. Yeah. God, that reminiscing.
That was a bad year.
Yeah. Yo Mama's Llama says you should make a lessons learned video from the last draft for all the people who are overcommitted to their takes this year. Bo Nix was way too early, etc. All the others that haven't aged well. Yeah, I guess we could also do a video on all the things we got right as well. So, and the thing about Bo Nix, Jeff, is what I would say with Bo Nix is if he'd gone anywhere else, I don't think this would have worked. I think Sean Payton I think people were doubting Payton, and probably rightly so, for the way it finished in New Orleans and perhaps started in Denver with Russell Wilson. Payton showed he can coach last year with the job he did there. Because Bo Nix looked like he couldn't play quarterback in the first game against Seattle. And then by the end of the year...
I was at that game.
Yeah. And do you know what the thing is what we may have seen the best of Bo Nix. This might be his ceiling, like managing the offense. I don't know if there's like levels to come from him. But he was functioning at a level where you thought he can win you a game of football anywhere by the end of the year.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh, Denver's taking this massive step." They lost what 35-10 in their playoff game against Buffalo. Like
Hammered.
that's why I talk about infrastructure so much. Their offensive line, they've used free agency really well. They built a really good O lineman. They have a really good coach. What they asked him to do was not like make these crazy high level throws. They asked him a lot to manage the game, and he did a better job than I thought. But that's the funny part about the draft. We can study all we want. Like even the Seahawks last year, like the safe picks by most measures, Christian Haynes was a 5-year starter. DJ James by the media, loved DJ James. I don't remember what your grade was, but the media loved DJ James. What a great value. Lasted what 10 minutes on the team. He's basically out of the league now. Like, and Tyrese Knight and AJ Barner, who we all hated those picks. Those might have been their best picks last year.
I didn't like the picks.
No, we were on shows here cringing at those picks. They might have been their best picks last year if Murphy doesn't take a big jump this year. So it's a hard sport to like. We are always going to learn lessons. We can only go on with the information we have, but that's what makes this fun. That's why we all watch.
Two more. Tucker says, please do live draft coverage of all 3 days. So the reason why people are saying this, Jeff, you may have noticed there's a lot of comments like this. I said at the end of the stream I did yesterday that I was considering doing, a draft live stream for the first time in years. And I'm kind of in two minds whether to do it. And I've probably misjudged this by pitching it because now people are expecting us to do it. And I'm really torn because it is 3-4 hours one day and then like 6 the next, and then I have to broadcast for the BBC on the Saturday.
Oh,
and
wow.
And there is if I've lost my voice by Saturday and have to tell them, well, why have you lost your voice, Rob? Because I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning talking about the draft on my own. It's gonna be something else. So
hard.
I am thinking of doing it. I appreciate everybody who has said they would watch. The pros of it is Jeff is I really struggled with the NFL Network stuff yet last year. For example, they're told not to tip the picks, and Ian Rappaport just can't help himself. Like he just gets up on there and he'll tell you this could be a quarterback here. There's been a lot of speculation about that. Oh, this could be a pass rusher, and well, there's a certain Alabama pass rusher available still, so that's probably what they're going to do. And it's tip the picks. It really frustrated me. And I could not live with the Rich Eisen relentless Michigan stuff.
They ruined the Penix thing.
The Penix thing, it could have been an amazing surprise, but Rappaport's got to be on the TV, and because he's an arse and has to blow it for everybody, because his ego is more important than fun. So I thought I'm going to do a stream purely to have the mute button on the screen throughout the whole thing. But then I also thought, well, people are just going to tip the picks in the live chat anyway. And then the other thing I kept thinking is, how many other people are going to do streams?
That's the thing.
Everyone's going to do one.
Like I heard McShay say on his show that they're doing a live. They pumped the hell out of that one. And the big curious thing for me is how do you reveal the picks? And I know like Bleacher Report does a really good show with like they've done it for years. They had Micah Parsons on. They've had players over the years.
Oh yes,
they've had a really good show. It used to have what's his name used to be Connor Rogers used to be on there. Has now become pretty big. And they've been one of the better draft shows. What they do is when Albert Breer or whatever tweets out the pick, they show the tweet on the screen and they start talking about it. A lot of people will wait for the live, and like I know, like the Pat McAfee show, like waited for the live announcement, and it's kind of clunky. It's like I hate watching these draft shows because they're not very good, but I love hearing the announcement from the Goodell and not knowing anything. So I'm like conflicted of like, how do you do this thing? Because like the broadcasts are so bad. They're just like they talk about the same crap. There's nothing. They don't talk about the teams at all. It's just like the most basic analysis, and there is a need for draft, and that's why so many streams have emerged in the last few years. Now it's like, okay, what do you watch? I was curious to know what your plan was going to be because I'm trying to find a better way of kind of watching the draft because we do our show, and the way we reveal the Seahawks pick is we have that ESPN tracker up, and we wait for it. It's so clunky and slow, and it's like it's not a good way to like learn. You lose the whole fun of like hearing the voice and hearing that announcement. It's like the analysis I can watch anywhere, but I don't know. I still haven't mastered that yet.
I think if I'm being really honest, I'm leaning towards not doing a stream, watching the broadcast, and then just turning mute on after they've reflected on the pick on the TV. And they've kind of gone, right, the Niners have taken Kelvin Banks Jr., what do you think, Daniel? And that he'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll ask, I'm still hoping they'll get Mayock back for the draft coverage this year and have him on there as well.
Why has no one hired him back? Like when he's on Rich Eisen, he is the best by far. And the problem I have with what you said is you're right. But the problem with the NFL Network and ESPN do is they tip way too much off right before it's about to happen.
Well, that's Schefter
when it stops. Came on last year and he does this little hint. Like, I think the Colts are going to take a quarterback that's very similar to Jalen Hurts. I have this inkling. And it's like at that point, everyone thought the Colts were taking Will Levis, if you remember that year. And all of a sudden they take Richardson. I'm like, you just spoiled the pick.
Yeah.
And he did it last year where they're like, Atlanta might be pulling something very odd out of there. And Schefter and Rappaport kind of have these odd roles on the draft where they don't really have much value unless they're tipping something off. And they tip way too much, even though they've stopped.
Why are they there?
I don't know. They should get rid of them. They serve no purpose on the draft.
They just ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
That's the time for Mel and Daniel Jeremiah and Mayock and Charles Davis and whoever. It's not the time for Ian Rappaport. You're not breaking news because you work for the league and the league gets the pick before everybody else.
And it's stupid because the whole thing that both networks do, and what I try to do is you turn your phones off so you're not tipping anything.
Yeah.
But they do it without doing it, and it ruins the coverage. And last year was especially bad. Like what they used to do back in the day is show the guy taking the phone call, and you're like, well, now we know what the pick is, and the guy would be crying in the back, and it's like, okay. But they agreed to stop showing that, but now they just have Schefter make some completely obvious hint of what's about to happen, and he's ruined some really good stuff in the last couple of years. And it's really pissed me off.
Yeah. Well, this is the reason why I was thinking of streaming, just because it will mean I don't watch the analysis and just provide my own. But then, like I said, if everybody's doing one, like people are already saying, like this Seahawks stream, like who are we all just going to end up pinching subscribers off not subscribers, like viewers off each other, diluting how many people are watching these things? And the majority of people, I imagine, are still going to watch this. But then people keep saying, yeah, but think of the subscribers you'll get. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty good. But I tend to do one immediately after the first round or after the Seahawks pick. And I'm leaning towards just doing that again. But if I do watch it on here, I'm going to have this with me. Like, so as soon as I see Ian Rappaport pop up on the screen, it's going off. And I think if what we really need to do is a campaign. Like we need the whole of the NFL world to send messages to Rich Eisen and the NFL Network and probably to Rappaport and Schefter and go, can you just not tip the picks, please? They did do that. They had a period where they didn't do it.
Well, they don't
back in.
But then they don't do it technically, but the whole fun for me, and like if you're like me and I know how much time you put in, the whole fun of the draft is the suspense. You don't know what's going to happen. And that's where I'm trying to, like, when you go and do the streams, you kind of lose. I don't know the best way of how you maintain the fun of that suspense, but you help the analysis part. But that's where I'm trying to find that middle ground of I want that suspense. That's the whole fun of the draft. And Schefter, man, Rappaport, they've ruined. Like that Penix pick last year would have made everyone go berserk. Like when Clayton Farrell or whatever his name is went 4th overall, like that's almost the most I've ever screamed during a draft, where it was like, holy F. And I want that. That's why I watch these things.
I just keep thinking that. Imagine if you didn't know the Penix thing. And then it was just the first thing you heard was him going, Michael Penix. You'd be like, whoa. But
I would have lost my mind.
You knew what was going to happen because of Rappaport.
Yeah.
Knob.
It pissed me off, man.
Anyway, last one. Evil Smarty says, will you be upset if they draft Jalen Milroe? Yes. I will be, but, no offense to the man. And I was listening to Ron Carthen today, Jeff, who was the ex-Titans GM, and he was saying he's basically, mine's gone blank, Saints, tight end quarterback, what's his name?
Taysom Hill.
Yeah. He said he's basically Taysom Hill, and I was like, oh no. This could be some, if they see him as Taysom Hill, like, did they bring him in with the idea of being a kind of half runner, half pass catcher, half maybe bit of quarterback? Maybe we can work on him.
That in the second round.
I know, but I was worried when I heard that though, Jeff. When I heard him saying that.
I know. Well, they could just wait till July 1st and trade for Taysom Hill.
Yeah, but it just made me think. You know, I can imagine a team doing that, and I don't want Seattle to spend a pick in the first 2 rounds on, say, a young potential Taysom Hill.
God no.
He can't process. He can't throw.
He's a quarterback that can't throw.
Yeah, he's a great athlete, but he's not like people say Lamar. Listen, come on. Lamar, he won the freaking Heisman. Like he could. He had. I always say there's 3 throws. There's the Lamar did a throw. Kyler Murray did a throw. Quinn Ewers' throw against Alabama. They're the 3 best throws I've seen in college football. Like Lamar could throw, and yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that. Jeff, always appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us for nearly an hour and a half. Much appreciated, man.
Always a pleasure, man.
Speak to you soon. That is Jeff, who is with us here for this stream, and no doubt will join us again before the draft as we build up. It's like 13 days away now, so exciting times, getting close to it. My big mission is to try and get up towards 10,000 subscribers by the draft. I don't think we're going to get there, but help us out because we're about 9,000, nearly about 9,200 now. So I don't think we're going to get 800 subscribers in 2 weeks. But if you have enjoyed the coverage that we've been doing in the recent weeks, if you enjoy these streams, if you enjoy SeahawksDraftBlog.com, just give us a subscribe. Let's get that number up towards 10,000. That is my big aim. It's been my big aim all the way through this process. Help us out. Subscribe. You won't miss anything during the draft season. And we are going to be doing a ton of stuff before, during, and after the draft. So subscribe to the channel. Give the video a like. Leave us a comment in the comment section. That always helps as well. Don't forget to check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com for all the latest too. Until next time, have a great weekend. I'll see you soon.